What's up guys, welcome back to another For Those Code video. This channel is where we discuss and learn new skills around the topic of design and development. If you want to grow your skills and learn new things that are coming up, please subscribe for more videos just like this. Don't forget to smash the like button for me. This really helps me to create more content. In this video, we'll be learning about how we can make this use of this awesome library Stitches to style up our application. Stitches is not just a CSS and JS library that takes the most recent component styling trends, such as creating variants for component reuse, server-side rendering as its core features. It's fully typed CSS and JS library with a prime focus on component-based architecture and developer experience. In this video, we'll be making the UI clone of tailscale.com using Stitches, which is an awesome another product. I personally have not tried it yet, but this was hanging around in my bookmark, so I decided to build a clone of it. Simple looking, awesome website. In the end of this video, you'll be able to style up your application using Stitches on your own. So we'll be covering everything you need to know about dealing with Stitches in your next application so that you can build your next application using Stitches. Stitches provides us with two separate libraries. If you go into the docs and see framework agnostic API, then we can see Stitches core and Stitches React somewhere down below, but there are two different libraries. So we will definitely be dealing with Stitches React in this video, which is kind of object notation syntax. Before we proceed to any questions, why Stitches as a CSS in JS library? If we have a look at the benchmarks right here in the documentation, we can see Stitches performs really well, and you can see the numbers is more performant than other famous libraries like emotion style components. So definitely it's a machine that's running on. There are some circumstances, and Stitches performs really better than other styling libraries, CSS and JS specifically, and helping developers to avoid unnecessary prop interpolation at runtime, making it significantly more performant than other styling libraries. Stitches has feature-rich features such as CSS prop, smart tokens, and fully typed APIs. And definitely we will be diving into most of the features of Stitches and building a UI clone of tailscale.com, and this is the application that we will be cloning. And definitely it's not 100% pixel perfect, but this is the UI clone of tailscale.com. And we are not dealing with all the website UIs, but most of the UI, because there had to be a hell lot of video into one. So this is totally responsive, and definitely with this you can create your next application using Stitches and make it look better. All right, so let's go ahead and start with a blank Next.js project. We'll be using Next.js and Stitches. So let's copy this up and create our next application with npx create next app, add latest, and install Stitches there. We've already created the project and named it Stitches Crash Course, and inside here we have also added the dependency, which is Stitches React. Now let's close this package.json file because we won't be adding any other packages. We are focusing on building application with Stitches. And first thing that we want to do is configure Stitches. So to configure Stitches, we need to create a config file and name it stitches.config.ts, or JS also works. So let's go ahead and create a new file. So inside of our root, we will name it stitches.config.ts. So inside of our Stitches config file, first thing we need to import is create Stitches, and we will also make the use of global CSS. So that's why we are importing these two. And also we want to export a constant called create Stitches, which will be using these styles overall in the application. And inside this create Stitches, we have a couple of so object notation syntax, which refers to what kind of theme are we dealing with. And the theme object takes in fonts and some colors, which is the colors of our application that we'll be dealing with. And these are all kind of CSS variables that we have declared. And these are font styles, font size and widths, and some line height and transitions, and also can be added here, for example radius as well. And we have also pre-configured some media queries, which is extra small devices, and given it max width, small devices, medium devices, and large devices. With this in place, we are pretty much ready. But the last thing is we want to also make the use of this global CSS that we imported. So we'll also create another constant and call it global styles. And inside global CSS, we added all the global styles and CSS reset and all the stuff inside here. So with this, we are pretty much ready for our stitches main config.js file. And let's go ahead and save it. And let's go to our public, pages and app.tsx. So let's start with document. So inside document, what we want to do is we want to import that get CSS text that we created from stitches config. And we also want to add up our styles. So what we want to do is we want to return a new HTML element with the head. And inside that head, we have the ID and dangerously set inner HTML, which is set to this imported get CSS text. And with this configuration, we will be good to go forward. Now, going back to app.tsx file, we want to make the use of interfont that we will be using in our application. So let's go ahead and import inter. This is how we deal with fonts inside of latest Next 13.1. Probably it's 13.1, and we have imported interfont, and we want to use that interfont. So let's go ahead and also make a constant called inter, which takes in these kind of key value pairs, subsets, and we have an array of Latin right here. And let's also add a couple of styles inside of our return right here. And we want to add in few tags here. For example, the tags are the class name, which is the class name for the font that we just added, and all the page props that it would be receiving. With this, we are also good with app.tsx. Now let's move on to index.tsx. Inside of index.tsx, what we want to do is we want to keep this head and call it stitches crash course, and leave the meta tags for now. And probably it's good to have some meta tags over here. And inside of our main, we will delete all the CSS styles that it has, which is imported from modules and whatnot. We'll also get rid of these styles because we are adding all the styles through stitches. And also we want to get rid of all the divs that we have inside of index. So inside of our main, first thing is to import our navbar, right? So to import a navbar, we need to create a navbar. So there are a couple of things that we need to decide upon what kind of design that we have currently. So for the navbar, we need outline button and some anchor links, as we see here, and logo. These are pretty much that would be okay for the navbar. And also if we look closely inside this website, we have a couple of button variations. For example, we have the outline button, we have the host button, we have the primary button, and we don't see any variation of other buttons used inside of our overall website, which is particularly this homepage. So let's go ahead and create some variants of the button so that we can use in overall of the application. For example, we can use primary, ghost, and outline button as a variants or variations. For that, we can create a new components folder, and inside components, we are going to create a new file. We named it buttons.tsx, and inside buttons.tsx, we want to first import the style from stitches React, Now let's go ahead and create a constant and call it button. And inside button, what we want to do is we want to add a few styles of our buttons. So to say, we want to create also variants. So I'll go ahead and paste what I've already written. And these are pretty much all the styles that we need and all the variants that we have. Let's go through it. So these are just the general styles: display of flex, border none, border radius, color, which is this particular color, which is using from the stitches config.ts file that we created, and which is we have misspelled stitches, and yeah, so it's taking these colors values, and we are using that color values inside of our buttons, which is white color. And also, if it has SVG, we are giving it height and width and margin left. And we have displayed a couple of variants for our button. For example, we have made a size variant. Inside size, we have a medium button, and you can also add another variant of the size and call it SM, which is a smaller button. But looking at the website design, we just need one variation of button, so that's why we are keeping it medium. And also some background variants, which are primary, outline, and ghost. And for the navbar, as we can see here, we need a ghost, not a ghost, but outline button. So let's go ahead and deal with it. Before we dive any further, we want to create another component inside of our application, and that particular component is called box component. Let's go ahead and create a box component here and call it box.tsx. Inside of our box component, what we want to do is we want to import styled from stitches React, and also we want to export a constant and call it box, which is a styled div element. And we want to add a few more styles to this. And the styles are just simple that we are adding here, which is display of flex, justify, content start, and a couple of variants for our box, which are align and justify and direction. There are two directions that we can pass into our box component, and align variants and justify. Justify between, around, and align center, left, and right. With this, we are good to go with our box component. Let's go ahead and close it, and button is also good to go. Let's go ahead and close this. So after that's done, now the next step is to create a navbar component. Let's call it navbar.tsx. Inside of our navbar, we want to import styled from stitches config.ts, which is inside of our root right here, and we are importing the box component and the button component that we made before, which is these box and buttons. Now I forgot one thing. I also need to create a responsive container. So let's call it responsive container. Our responsive container holds all the container and holds a max width of our application. So we'll be importing styled from stitches, which is an API stitches provides us with, and create a constant called responsive container so that we can use inside of our application, which is just a container with a max width, margin auto, some margin padding left and right, position relative. And by the way, we also have already added SM, which is a breakpoint that we are using. This SM is accessed from this particular place where we have media SM. So we added it inside of our navbar and inside of our responsive container. And when it's small, in small devices, we have a margin left of 1 rem and padding right of 1 rem. With this, we are pretty much good to go ahead and use our responsive container inside of our navbar. So inside of our navbar, let's also import responsive container, and we want to export a default function and return some JSX right here. So let's go ahead and use all the needed thing that we have imported right here on the top, and we want to import everything. So basically, I don't want to bore you with typing all the things, but we will go through each of the steps. What are we dealing with? So we are making the use of the box component and giving it direction of row, align to center, and class name, and also another box component here and a logo. And these box component, as you can see, are just a class name of navbar. So we haven't pretty much defined that particular class name, neither we have defined navigation bar. So let's go ahead and define that navigation bar constant using the styled API from style components. So on the top here, we want to import navigation bar and use the styled from our stitches config, and we have the navbar class added, and we have display of flex width of 100%, align items to center, font size to 6. These are all accessed from these stitches config. These dollar signs are all accessed from stitches config file. So, and also in small devices we have the padding 20 and 0. So all of the styles are added here, and let's go ahead and save this. So and also let's go ahead and run our local server. Looks like we haven't removed the global styles, so let's go ahead and remove these global styles from here. If you take a look at localhost 3000, I'll bring the screen right here. We can see nothing currently. Let's see why. Because we haven't really imported our navbar inside of our main index.tsx. Let's go ahead and import our navbar right in here. To import our navbar, we will first import it from, also want to remove this interfont that we have already imported before, and rather import navbar from component navbar. And let's go ahead and use that particular navbar inside of our main right in here. So let's go ahead and paste it, and let's see that inside of the browser. And looks like our logo is not defined. Yes, that's right, we haven't really defined our logo. So let's go ahead and create a new file and call it assets. So inside assets we will add all the logos that we have. So inside here we will add assets, and inside of our assets we want to add all the logos that we'll be using throughout the application. Looks like we forgot to add a logo. So let's also import logo and go ahead and save it and see it in the browser. And we can see something like this, which is pretty much decent. I wonder why this is a little bit of margin on the top. So it's better we remove that padding top for now. It looks decent. Let's go ahead inside of our navbar and remove this padding top. And let's go ahead and save it. And if we take a look at the browser and see the responsiveness, we also have a responsive navbar, but we really haven't added a functionality of open this hamburger menu, which we will not in this video. So this is what we have, and if you check here, it's the same, and we do have the customers fading out in different devices and collapsing all the navbar in a different devices less than 760 or 780 breakpoint that we added. And if we do the same here, the customers is gone, and we have the navigation breaking up, changing it to collapsible menu. All right, so after that, it's good to go ahead and create this particular piece of UI, which is the main banner. Let's go ahead and call it a main banner, main banner.tsx. And inside of our main banner, we want to first import style from styled, stitched config file, and we also want to import the responsive container that we created before, which is components responsive container, and also the buttons, because we are also dealing with the buttons inside of our main banner right here, which is h1 and this text, and a button which is primary, and a coast button. So now we will create a default function and call it main banner, and inside here we want to return some JSX that we'll be dealing with. So I'll go ahead and add all the markup that I've already prepared and go through it. Okay, so these are all the markup. So it would be inside of a container which we created before, and it's a banner section which we haven't created. So let's go ahead and create a constant, call it banner section. So it's similar to style components if you think. So a banner section, and inside here we have a banner class and a p tag, banner buttons and banner dot buttons. So if you take a look at here, we have used buttons, which is size is just MD. So we are just dealing with medium-sized buttons overall in our home page of our application. So there are no variants, and the background is primary. For this button, the background is ghost, and the size is medium. And we also have added the arrow SVG. And this is pretty much it. And for the styles, this is how we added the styles. For the banner, margin, some margin, and in the medium devices, we have the margin reduced to 64 pixels, and an H1 would take in the font size we declared from stitchesconfig.ts, and also font width of normal. Medium devices font size of to a little bit lesser than 1, which is 2, and also a p tag with the font size accessed from the stitches config, and also colors, some padding, margin max width of 42 rems, and a line height of 1.75 rem. And in medium devices we have these fonts, and banner buttons gets a gap of 20 pixels. And also for the banner buttons, which is this particular button, what we have here is display of flex, align items to center, text align to center, justify content to center. And in the small devices we have flex wrap to wrap, because we want to wrap our button inside of small devices, but we don't see flex wrap right here in the live website, but we are adding it inside here. So let's go ahead and save this, and we can use our main banner inside of our index.tsx. So let's import our main banner that we created just right now, and we also want to use the main banner we created. So let's go ahead and save it, and let's take a look at the browser, and this is how it looks like, which is decent. Yeah, it's kind of same, but obviously we are not aiming for pixel for perfect conversion. Anyway, so now let's move ahead to this particular section, which is trusted by thousands of teams including, and we have a couple of logos which are already imported inside of assets. For that particular section, we want to call it teams.tsx. So inside of our components, let's create a new file and call it teams.tsx. And inside of teams.tsx, firstly we want to import style from stitches config, and we also want to use a couple of components that we created before, which is responsive container and a box component that we created. And let's now export a default function, and for that default function we would call it team box, which would return some JSX element right here. And inside this JSX, I will grab some markup that I've already created and paste it right in here. So let's go through the markup. This responsive container, it's wrapped, this div is wrapped by the responsive container, and we have the team sections which we haven't created before. So let's create a constant and call it team section, which would make the use of styled imported from right in the top. And we created team section, and we have a couple of added CSS right here. And inside of our div, we give it a class name of teams, and it's a new section with a span called trusted by thousands of teams including, and we have a couple of ULLI tags. Inside there we are using images taken from the live website, which is tailscale.com, files, images, and these all images. So after that in place, we have created new styled, which is stitches config, and we have the teams which is aligned to the center, display of flex, justify content to center, margin bottom of 56 pixels, and for the span we have a margin bottom of 24, because if we take a look at here, it's 24 pixels. And for these icons, I mean these logos, we have added team association class, and a UL of it would take in display of flex gap of 30 pixels. And in medium devices we have flex wrap of wrap, justify content center, align items center, and also some other styles to our images. So the images are manually taking these hard-coded width and height, and it's all nth child. So it's a CSS selector, and this is how we can use CSS selector inside of our stitches. So with this in place, we are okay with our theme section. If we hit and save and take a look at the local host, we don't see it because we haven't really imported it. So inside of our index.tsx, we need to import the themes box. Let's go ahead and import our themes box and also use themes box inside of our file here. And if you hit save and take a look at here, we can see our themes box has been added, and it's also responsive because we added flex of wrap to our ULLI child right here. Let's move ahead with this hero image. So to create that particular hero image, we are making a new component and calling it hero image.tsx. Inside of hero image.tsx, we first import a style from our config, and we also want to make the use of two components that we declared before, and also we want to import the image, which is the yellow circle that we see here, and also the red. We call it just a yellow circle, and we want to import it because we want to use that, and also export a default constant or just a function, and return some JSX. So inside of our that JSX, we already have prepared some markup. So let's go ahead and go this thing go to this thing. It's called responsive container. We wrapped all of our stuff there. Hero image, we haven't created that particular constant yet. So let's go ahead and create a new constant called hero image, and that would take in the styled used from the styled API from stitches config, and inside there we have the images and display a flex width of 100%, align item to center. And for the images, which is this particular image, we have added a class name of image device circles and added image right here, and these are pretty much two divs. So what we are doing is, this is position absolute, and this particular the outer boundary is position relative. That's why we have the position absolute left of -15, some translate of 0 and 20%, and in smaller devices we are hiding it off. And for this SVGs inside of our image device circle, we in medium devices we are shrinking it down with the width of 160 pixels and height of auto. So with this in place, let's go ahead and save it, and if we take a look at the browser, we must see our images in place. We probably haven't imported hero image inside of our index.tsx. Let's go ahead and import hero image here. Also, we want to make the use of hero image we just imported. Let's go ahead and save it. And if we take a look at the browser, then we can see our hero image has been added and all the styles has been applied. So far it's looking good. Now let's move ahead with creating our new block, which is this particular block, which is let's build your virtual network. And we have a heading, which is probably h2, and this is some text and also some ULLIs with some images. Okay, so for that block we will call it let's build, and which would hold this particular dark background that we see here, and until that particular place, until here we have a dark background. So this would be our probably until here we have the dark background. We also can add a dark background to here. So let's create a new file and call it let's build, and inside component we'll add new file. Inside let's build, we'll first import style from stitches config, and we also want to import some couple of components that we defined before, we created before, so which is this particular responsive container and box, and we also want to import the blue circle to our right. So you can see there's a blue circle to the right, and until now we have the yellow and red circle. So we also need to add that blue circle, so we imported it. So we will now default export a default function and call it let's build section, and inside here we want to add some markup that we already created before, and this is the markup. And going through the markup, we have created let's build, which is the constant we haven't really created. So let's go ahead and add let's build, and it's wrapped inside here, and we have a class name of wrapper, and we wrapped everything inside a responsive container. And to our right we have our build circles with the blue circles, which imported from blue circles. And we have responsive container. Inside there we have a couple of class names, build and build heading. And for the heading we added h2, and we also have a p tag, and we have a couple of logos, which is inside of build logos. And inside ULLI we have the logo, and we also have added build networks, which is this particular section, and we call it build networks. And inside that build networks we have build network tabs and build network diagrams, which is wrapped inside the two divs. And inside there we have two LIs, which is first is active and second is inactive. And as you can see, first is active and second is inactive, but we won't be diving into the functionality of showing this active and inactive state and toggling this, but rather than just focus on styling with stitches. And inside li we have the h4 and p tag, and inside this li we also have h4 and p tag. With this in place, let's go ahead and see what we have installed. We have the styled, and inside there we have the wrapper class, where we have position relative, and this mild color is taken from the config, and jet index -1. And for the build, we have the align items to center and a couple of classes, and there's small devices padding to 3 rem. And for the build circles, the circles to our right, which is the blue circles, we are making a position of absolute, right to 0 and top to 0, and jet indexes of -1. And in the smaller devices we want to shrink this particular svg to the width of 200 pixels, and small devices we want to display don't display it. And we have a couple of build headings, which is the S2, which is the font size of 2, font weight of normal, padding bottom. And in the medium size we have a font size of 3, and small we have a font size of 4 taken from config, and also added some styles for p tag, font size of 4, and max width, line height, a color, margin, and sm. In the small size we have the font size of 5, and also we have a built network, which is this particular place where we have the two split area, and we used display of grid and 1fr and 2fr split into 2fr and 1 fraction unit, template rows, and column gap of 5 pixels, and a row gap of 5. And probably we don't need a row gap, but we are just adding it. Align items to center and padding. And in the medium devices we are making the grid template columns to 1 fraction unit, and in small devices we have the 0 padding. And also built logos have some styles added to it, and we have added the image of grayscale and opacity of 0.5. And for the images child we have hard-coded some values. And for the tabs we are also creating some styles. And in the medium devices its padding is a bit reduced. Small devices we have a flex of 1, and active, which is this particular active list, is when active it's bordered left, and in small devices border left is known, but we have a border top. And in li if it's not active then we have a border of left, and in small devices we have border left none and border top. Also some styles for our h4 and p tags and all this stuff. So that would be a lot of writing if we have to write this out. So if we hit save and take a refresh, and we should see it, we don't see it because it's a mistake always, because we haven't imported let's build. Let's go ahead and import let's build inside of our index.tsx and go ahead and save it and take a look at here. It says let's build section. It's called let's build section, and if we scroll, and we can see it's localhost, because I also get confused sometimes. It's localhost and the background is taking effect. We have the background here, and we also have these thing. So if we collapse, we can see there is some changes this particular section, but we still have a kind of white background here. We will definitely fix that up. So now the next thing is, let's go ahead and move to this particular section, which is app label 4, and let's go ahead and create a new component and call it app label 4.tsx. So first thing, we want to import everything that we need, which is style from style.config.ts and responsive container box, and also we want to import the Mac OS icon that's using, which is this particular icon. We are not using else other icons because that would be too much, so just stick with one icon. We are creating a function, and that's a default export function, and we want to call it available for, and we haven't created this particular style wrapper, so to say, available for styles. So we also want to create a constant and call it available for styles, and we want to wrap everything inside there with some ULLIs, having the Mac OS icon, and inside span we have the text Mac OS. And we have also added the available for styles using the styled from the config, and in the wrapper we are making it position relative, and we have the background color of a mild white, gen index -1, takes items to center, display of flex, and in the small devices we have reduced the padding, and for the available content the background of gray, padding and borders radius, and some p tags, and inside UL we have in the smaller devices we want to flex wrap and also use some colors from our config. So with that in place, let's go ahead and import our available for inside of our index file, and I'll go ahead and save it. And inside of here, let's also add available for. So with that in place, if we hit save and take a look here, we have the available for with the background, same background, and some icons. If we squeeze this up, it's so decent, but we can further add some breakpoint values and fix these gaps, but it looks fine till now. All right. Okay, so now let's move ahead to the other section, which is user existing identity provider section. And for that section is it's nearly the same thing that we have here, which is let's build, and we have the same thing, heading, subheading, and logos, heading, subheading, logos, and an additional button, which is a ghost button, and also this image. So for this section, we are going to create a new component and call it identity providers.tsx. So inside of our identity provider.tsx, the first thing that we want to do is import style from config, style config. And we also want to import all the logos that we'll be using, and we have already added it inside of assets. And we also want to use a couple of components that we declared before, which is a button, box component, and also this responsive container. And after that's done, we will create a default export function and return some JSX right in here. And I've already created some markup that we can use, and I will just add it here. So this particular markup is wrapped in identity providers. We haven't really created that particular constant. Let's go ahead and add that particular constant, which is identity providers, and also add some classes and call it wrapper. And inside of our responsive container, we have everything inside here, which is the section with an h2 and p tag and ulli with the respective logos that we have. Also, we have imported button, which is a size of md variant and background of ghost inside of our button, and also added svg. And this is the image that we have down here, which is this particular image, which is this particular image taken from the Tailwind live site. With this, let's go ahead and widget the styles. There are a lot of styles involved here. Wrapper is position relative, background of mild white, and gen index of -1, align items to center, display of flex. And for the heading, we have the margin of auto because we want to center it, align items pixel line to center. And for the S2 in the medium devices, font size is 3, taken from the config file. And in the small devices, it's 4, taken from the config file. And for the p tag, we have the maximum width, margin, auto, font size of 4, align height 28, font weight of light. And small devices, we have the font size of 5. Respectively, we have the identity logos, and ULLI receives a grayscale, and we have the identity device div, which has the image, and the image is 100% with the margin top of 64 pixels. You may have noticed that I've used somewhere pixels, somewhere rem, but it's recommended to use rems instead. So let's go ahead and import identity providers inside of our main file here, and we'll import identity providers and also import identity providers to the top. With this in place, if we save and take a look at the browser, we have the identity providers added with this image. This is how it looks. Now, last thing that we want to cover is we want to cover this particular CTA section, which is get started for free, try Tailscale out for free on your own device. And we have this same button group that we have in the hero section, which is this, and this is call to action, so which is interesting. So let's go ahead and build this. For this section, I want to create a new component and call it main CTA. And inside of main CTA.tsx, what we want to do is we want to import a couple of things. First thing, we want to import a style from stitches config, and we also want to import a couple of components that we created before, which is responsive container, button, and a box component. We want to create a function and export it, and we will name that particular function main action, and inside markup, and it's wrapped in main action styles, which we haven't created yet. So now let's go ahead and create our main action styles. We will add main action styles there, and it's wrapped inside a responsive container because it's inside a container, and it's a new section with a box component used, and its class name is CTA, which is S2, and paragraph tags, and we have the same kind of buttons that we have in the hero image, which is CTA buttons of button size of medium, and the background is primary, and for this we have a background of ghost. And regarding the styles, we have already added the styles with a background color and margin of auto, text align to center, and given it a bit of padding of 96 pixels, display of block. And for the CTA buttons, we are adding display of flex, align item center, justify content center, same goes to here, but the CTA is flex direction column, and a gap of CTA buttons of 20. And in small devices, we have the flex wrap, and the S2 is 3, taken from the config, and this is normal, taken from the config, font weight. And in the small devices, we have the font size of 4, and for the paragraphs, we have the font size of 4, and color is gray, and small devices font size of 6 to our paragraph. So with this in place, we are pretty much okay. So let's go ahead and import this main action inside of our index file. And we also add this particular stuff called main action. If we go ahead and save this and take a look at the browser, then we should see we have the main action. Let's bring up our DevTools, and inside there we could see the breakpoints that's taken into effect. In this video, we'll learn about how we can make the use of this awesome library, CSS and JS library, and build for starting up our application. We definitely do not write it down simply. I don't want to waste your time simply looking at me typing. It might be boring, but I hope you learned something new from this and you are comfortable and confident enough to implement stitches in your next project. If you want to learn more around the topics of design and development, please subscribe for more videos just like this. Don't forget to smash the like button for me. This really helps me to create more content. Thanks a lot, guys. See you in the next one.